Welcome to Crushed Husband. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. I stood in the farmhouse kitchen, watching the steam rise from my cup of coffee. The sun had just started to peek over the horizon, casting a soft glow on the worn-out wood of the kitchen table. My hands gripped the mug, its warmth a small comfort, but the peace of the morning felt more like a distant memory these days. The silence was unsettling. Marissa used to be the first one up, often humming along to the radio while making breakfast. But lately, it had all changed. She didn't seem to have the same rhythm, the same ease that used to fill the house with warmth. Now, it was as if she was constantly in a rush, always on edge, always distracted. I glanced over at her, standing in front of the bathroom mirror. The bright white lights flickered above her head as she applied makeup, her movements sharp, almost mechanical. I hadn't seen her spend this much time on her appearance in months, maybe even years. She used to be effortlessly beautiful, but now it felt like she was trying too hard to look perfect. "Coffee's ready," I said, trying to break the silence, though it seemed to hang thick in the air. She didn't respond right away, her eyes fixed on her reflection. When she finally looked up, it wasn't a smile that greeted me, but a quick nod. She grabbed her mug off the counter, her fingers lightly brushing against mine as she took it, but there was no warmth in the touch. "No breakfast today," she said, her voice detached, like she was reading off a script. "I've got a busy day ahead, a ton of stuff to wrap up at the firm." I wasn't surprised. Marissa's work at the marketing firm had always been demanding, but lately it seemed like the job had swallowed her whole. Gone were the lazy mornings we used to share, the ones where we'd linger over breakfast, talking about everything and nothing. Now, it was all about deadlines, conference calls, and late-night meetings that I never quite understood. I watched her turn back to her phone, her eyes glued to the screen as she quickly scrolled through messages. A notification popped up, and her lips curved into a small smile, a smile that wasn't for me. I couldn't remember the last time she'd smiled at me like that. I pushed the thought away, trying to focus on the familiar routine. "You sure you don't want anything to eat? I could make eggs, bacon, your favorite." She didn't even look up this time. "I'm fine, Caleb, really." She paused for a beat, her fingers tapping the phone screen. "I've got to run. Big presentation today." I watched her pull on a perfectly pressed blouse, the fabric smooth against her skin. She moved with purpose, but there was something about the way she seemed so removed, like I was nothing more than an afterthought. The unease I'd been feeling for the past few weeks tightened in my chest. "Are you okay?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. She froze, just for a second, then gave me a tight smile. "I'm fine, Caleb. Everything's fine." But I could see it. The way her fingers lingered a little too long on the phone, the way her eyes darted to the screen whenever a message came in. There was something she was hiding, and as much as I tried to convince myself otherwise, I couldn't shake the feeling that it had something to do with me. "I'll see you tonight," she said, grabbing her bag. Her voice was distant, like she was already a world away. "Yeah, have a good day," I replied, though I wasn't sure I meant it. I stood there, staring at the empty space where she had been just moments before, the silence of the house feeling heavier than ever. I knew something was wrong, and whatever it was, it had nothing to do with late-night presentations or busy workdays. It had everything to do with her, and it was eating away at me. I took a slow sip of my coffee, my thoughts spinning, and wondered how long it would take for me to uncover whatever secrets she was hiding. The hum of the clinic's fluorescent lights echoed in my ears, but it was the buzz of my phone on the counter that kept drawing my attention. The surgical room was prepped, the patient charts in front of me, but my mind wasn't here. It hadn't been all morning. I had tried to focus on my work, to lose myself in the routine of vaccinations, checkups, and the comfort of familiar faces. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the image of Marissa, her distant smile, her distracted eyes. Ethan, one of my closest friends and colleagues, noticed the tension in my posture as I stared at the phone, still buzzing with notifications. He cleared his throat from across the room, his voice breaking through the fog of my thoughts. "Everything all right at home?" he asked, his tone light, but there was concern in his eyes. I glanced up, trying to mask the anxiety that had settled in my chest. Ethan was the kind of guy who didn't miss much. He'd been with me through the highs and lows, and if I was being honest, I didn't mind the occasional shoulder to lean on. But this felt different. This was something I wasn't ready to talk about. "Yeah, just a lot on my plate lately," I muttered, my voice tight, even to my own ears. He raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. Uh-huh. You've been saying that for a couple of weeks now. You sure everything's good with Marissa? He folded his arms across his chest, leaning back against the counter, waiting for my response. I sighed, setting the phone down, pushing the buzzing out of my mind. I don't know, man. Something feels off. She's been different lately, more distant. She's working later, staying on her phone all the time. I don't even know if she's telling me the whole truth anymore. Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering my words. I felt the weight of the silence as I focused on the chart in front of me, but I couldn't focus on it. My mind kept drifting back to Marissa, to her distracted glances, to the smile she had given to someone else that wasn't me. You know, Caleb, if something's bothering you, you're not going to fix it by just avoiding it. You've been so consumed with your practice lately, and I get it. It's easy to lose track of other things. But you've got to talk to her about this. I'm telling you, ignoring it won't make it go away. I didn't want to hear it, but I knew he was right. He always was. But confronting Marissa, getting to the truth, sounded like stepping into a minefield. What if I was wrong? What if I was just overthinking everything? I shifted on my feet, running a hand through my hair, frustration bubbling inside me. I don't know if I can. I've been trying to focus on work, to just let her figure whatever this is out on her own. But it's like something's changed. I feel like I don't even know her anymore, you know? Ethan's expression softened, his usual joking demeanor replaced with a rare seriousness. I get it, I do. But Caleb, if you don't face whatever's going on, it's just going to keep eating at you. Trust me, I've seen it happen. You're a good guy, but sometimes you need to stop being the guy who fixes everything for everyone else and start fixing what matters to you. I felt a sharp pang in my chest at his words. I knew what he meant. I'd spent so much of my life trying to put out everyone else's fires that I hadn't even noticed the ones smoldering in my own backyard. Marissa, my marriage, this distance between us that I could feel but couldn't quite explain. I just don't know if I'm ready to hear what I might find, I admitted, my voice quieter now. What if I'm wrong, Ethan? What if I confront her, and it turns out I'm just being paranoid? Ethan clapped me on the shoulder, his grip firm, understanding. You'll never know until you ask, man, and whether you're right or wrong, you'll at least have the truth. No more guessing, no more silence. I knew he was right. The longer I let this go, the more it was going to eat away at me. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. With a deep breath, I nodded. You're right. I can't keep ignoring it. I've got to talk to her. Ethan gave me a small, supportive smile. I know it's not easy, but you've got this, Caleb. Just take a step back, breathe, and talk to her. You'll figure it out. As I turned back to the task at hand, a quiet resolve settled over me. I couldn't let this go on any longer. Whatever was happening between Marissa and me needed to be addressed, even if I wasn't sure I was ready for the truth. I spent the next few hours working on autopilot, distracted and distant, as my mind kept running back to Marissa. The clinic was quiet in the late afternoon, save for the soft sounds of the radio playing over the speakers. I cleaned the counters, checked the patient schedule, and tried to convince myself that the conversation I knew I had to have with her could wait another day. But it couldn't. And the more I tried to push it out of my mind, the more I realized I was only running from the inevitable. I left the clinic a little earlier than usual, determined to get home, make dinner, and try to bring some semblance of normalcy to the evening. I had already decided on beef bourguignon, Marissa's favorite. She deserved something special, I told myself. Something that would show her I still cared. Maybe, I thought, it would remind us of the closeness we used to share. When I arrived home, the house was eerily quiet. The faint hum of the refrigerator was the only sound filling the space. Marissa's car was parked in the driveway, but she wasn't in the kitchen where she normally would have been, winding down after a busy day. "Marissa?" I called out as I set my keys down, my voice bouncing off the empty walls. There was no answer. I felt that familiar unease creep back in, tightening in my chest. I walked through the living room, the scent of something faintly floral filling the air. Her purse was on the couch, but she wasn't in the bedroom either. A text on my phone flashed, another message from her. I quickly glanced at it, but it wasn't anything urgent, just work stuff. As usual, a few moments later, I heard the sound of the front door opening. Marissa stepped inside, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She looked flustered, eyes darting to her phone as she walked through the door, practically glued to the screen. "Hey," I said, my voice softer than I'd intended. Her gaze lifted briefly from the phone, catching mine. Hey, sorry I'm late. The traffic was a nightmare. You okay? I forced a smile, though it felt foreign on my face. Yeah, just wanted to make something nice for dinner. Beef bourguignon. Thought we could spend some time together. She blinked as if my words hadn't registered and gave a quick nod. That sounds great, but I've got a ton of work to do. I might need to skip dinner. That was new. We used to eat together almost every night, no matter how busy things got. My stomach dropped, and I pushed the nagging feeling that had been growing in me all day to the back of my mind. No, come on, I said, a little more insistently. It'll be ready in 20 minutes, just a little time to unwind. I think we both need it. She hesitated, her lips pressed into a thin line as her fingers hovered over her phone. Then, with a small sigh, she slipped the phone into her bag, her posture stiff. Okay, fine, but just for a little while. I've got this thing to finish up before tomorrow. I nodded, trying to mask the unease rising in me. I busied myself in the kitchen, focusing on the chopping board, the soft sizzle of the beef hitting the hot pan. Marissa moved around the kitchen in the background, her steps light and quick, as if she couldn't stand to be in one place for too long. It was so different from the way we used to move around the kitchen together, sharing space with easy conversation. I set the table, noticing how her eyes kept darting back to her phone, her fingers tapping away as she scrolled through messages. A small notification popped up, and she smiled, just a flicker, but it was enough to catch my attention. That smile, it wasn't for me. I was too quiet when I set the wine down on the table. She noticed, her brows furrowing slightly as she looked up at me. What's wrong? I tried to keep my voice steady. My words stuck in my throat, but I pushed on. I don't know, Marissa. Lately, I feel like I'm losing you. You're always busy, you're always on your phone, and you're barely here anymore. What's going on? Her face tightened, and she quickly looked away, her eyes not meeting mine. Caleb, we've been over this. Work is stressful. You know that. But that's not it, is it? I asked, my voice low. It's not just work. You've been pulling away from me, and I don't know why. I feel like there's something you're hiding, something you're not telling me. The words hung in the air, thick with tension. I could see her fingers tremble as she reached for her glass of wine, her eyes now avoiding mine completely. I'm not hiding anything, Caleb, she said, her voice clipped. You're just overthinking it. I'm fine. Everything's fine. But the way she said it, flat, automatic, like she'd practiced it, made my skin crawl. Something inside me snapped. No, I said, my voice breaking the silence. You're not fine, and neither am I. At that moment, her phone buzzed again, and without thinking, I glanced down at the screen. The text was short, but the words froze me in my tracks. Can't wait to feel you again. My heart stopped. I looked at her, my mind spinning, and for a split second, I thought I might be imagining it. But the cold dread creeping through me told me otherwise. She had been hiding something, and now I had proof. Her face was pale when I looked back up, her lips parted in shock. She knew I'd seen the message. Caleb, wait, she stammered, but I didn't want to hear it. I stood up from the table, pushing my chair back with force, my hands clenched into fists at my sides, my stomach churning with a mix of anger and betrayal. Who is he, Marissa? I asked, my voice shaking. Her lips quivered as she opened her mouth, but no words came out. The silence between us felt unbearable. Tell me, goddammit, I shouted, my anger bubbling over. Who is he? Marissa finally looked up, tears pooling in her eyes, but she didn't answer. The dinner, the wine, the smile she had given him, it all felt like a cruel joke, and I was the punchline. I stood there, my world cracking in half, and for the first time in months, I realized that whatever was left between us, whatever love I had clung to, had already faded away. The days after the dinner were like a fog. I barely slept, my mind replaying Marissa's face, the way her eyes avoided mine, the way her hands trembled. I couldn't stop thinking about the text I had seen on her phone. The part of me that wanted to confront her, to demand the truth, was at war with the part of me that felt completely powerless. I had been right to be suspicious, but now what? What did it mean that I had proof? That she wasn't even trying to deny it? I had always been the trusting kind. Too trusting, maybe. I had never questioned Marissa's loyalty, never imagined there was someone else. But now, I felt like an idiot. I felt like everything I had believed in was a lie, so I decided to take a different approach. I couldn't confront her without being sure. I needed to gather the truth. No more assumptions, no more doubts. Just cold, hard facts. I spent the next few days as quietly observant as I could manage, walking through our home like a stranger. The place that used to feel like mine, like us, now felt hollow. The air was thick with the unspoken tension. One morning, I left for the clinic a little earlier than usual. I had no particular reason for rushing out. But as I walked to my truck, a thought flashed through my mind. Her laptop. Marissa always left it on the counter by the door when she wasn't using it. I'd never snooped through it before, but right now, I needed to know. The clinic was a whirlwind of tasks, and as much as I tried to lose myself in the work, it was hard not to hear Ethan's words echo in my mind. If something's wrong, you're not going to fix it by avoiding it. By the time I wrapped up my day, the clinic was empty. I grabbed my phone and checked my messages. Marissa hadn't sent a word. I knew she was busy, but the silence felt deliberate. I went home, trying to act casual. Marissa was there, as expected, walking around in the kitchen, sorting through papers. But I noticed her laptop sitting on the counter, just like I'd hoped. "Hey," I called out, my voice steady. "How was your day?" She didn't look up, her eyes scanning something on her phone. "Busy, as usual." I nodded, walking past her. "I'm going to take a shower. I'll be back down in a bit." I kept walking until I reached the bathroom, closing the door behind me. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to breathe. I couldn't screw this up, not now. I made it quick. Less than 5 minutes later, I was back downstairs, trying to act natural. Marissa was still absorbed in her phone, her attention completely elsewhere. Good. I glanced at the laptop. My heart raced as I approached it, my fingers grazing the keyboard. I hadn't planned this, hadn't even considered what I might find. But now that I was here, I couldn't back down. I opened the laptop, thankful that Marissa had never used a password. The screen blinked to life, showing her email inbox. There, near the top, was an email notification that made my stomach drop. Darren Cole. My breath caught. Darren. The name hit me like a hammer. I'd heard it before, but in passing, nothing that had seemed important. But now, in the context of everything else, it felt like the worst kind of omen. I clicked the email, hands trembling as I read through the content. It was casual, friendly, but the tone was intimate. Too intimate. The words jumped off the screen. "Can't wait to see you again this weekend. I'll be thinking about you every minute until then. I don't want anyone to know, but I think you feel the same way, don't you?" The message burned in front of my eyes, and for a moment, I thought I might be sick. Darren Cole wasn't just some colleague, some work associate. This wasn't just an innocent flirtation. This was something deeper, something real. I kept scrolling, unable to stop myself. More messages from the same person. Sent from Marissa's email account to Darren's, hidden in plain sight, just like everything else had been. Hotel bookings, weekend trips, plans. It was all there. The secret life she had been leading behind my back. One I had never even considered. I closed the laptop with a snap. My hands were shaking uncontrollably, but the coldness in my chest kept me from breaking down. I had the proof now. There was no denying it. The anger came next, cold and sharp. The feeling that had been building up inside me since that night at dinner, when everything had started to unravel, now hit me full force. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. Marissa had crossed a line, and there was no going back. As I stood there, staring at the laptop, I realized something. I wasn't going to let her make me feel like the fool anymore. I needed to confront her, now. No more waiting, no more pretending like this could be fixed with a simple conversation over dinner. I had to face the truth that she had been hiding from me all along. The following day felt like a blur. I was consumed with the knowledge I'd uncovered, the weight of it pressing down on me like a 100-pound stone. I couldn't think straight. Every time I looked at Marissa, I saw the lies, the messages, the betrayal, and it was suffocating. But I knew I couldn't confront her just yet. I wasn't ready to let her spin some excuse, to give her the chance to talk her way out of it. No, I needed proof, the full truth. That night, I set a plan in motion. I knew Marissa was going to the gym. She had been using it as an escape lately, something to keep her busy when I wasn't around. I had planned to leave for a late-night shift at the clinic, but tonight, I had other plans. I needed her out of the house, and I needed time to set things up without her asking questions. By the time she was getting ready to leave, I had already begun preparing the living room. I rearranged the furniture slightly to make sure the cameras I'd installed, hidden in plain sight in the corners of the room, would capture everything. I had bought them under the pretense of improving the security system around the house. Little did she know, those cameras would be my eyes when I wasn't in the room. I had also sent a message from Marissa's phone to Darren earlier in the day, arranging for him to come over later that evening. I phrased it casually, just like she would have. "I'm looking forward to seeing you tonight. Can't wait to feel you again. 8 p.m. at the house. Don't keep me waiting." I hoped he wouldn't suspect anything. He wouldn't, not with the way she'd been leading him on. Marissa left at 7:30 p.m., dressed in gym clothes, earbuds in, her eyes locked on her phone screen. She barely glanced at me as she stepped out the door. I set the final part of the plan in motion. I waited, heart pounding, as the clock ticked closer to 8 p.m. This was it. I had to force myself to stay calm, to breathe. I kept running through the plan in my head. As much as I was terrified of what would happen next, I knew this was the only way. I wasn't going to let this go on any longer. The doorbell rang just before 8 o'clock. I took one last deep breath and stood up. He was here. I opened the door, and there he was, Darren Cole, standing on the doorstep, a little too casual, a little too eager. The faint smell of cologne hit me before he even spoke. "Hey, is Marissa around?" he asked, his voice smooth, almost playful. I gave him a tight smile. "She's at the gym, but I think you know that already." His eyebrows furrowed for just a split second. Maybe he was trying to gauge my mood, but I could tell he wasn't expecting what came next. "Come on in," I said, stepping aside to let him through. The tension was thick in the air, but I kept my expression neutral, calm. He walked past me, oblivious to the trap I'd set. Once he was in the living room, I gestured for him to sit down. "Make yourself comfortable. Marissa will be back in a bit." He nodded, looking around, likely a little confused by the change in the room's setup. But he didn't seem to care much. That was about to change. "So, what's going on, man?" he asked, glancing back at me as I took a seat across from him. His voice still sounded too relaxed, like nothing was wrong, like this wasn't some clandestine meeting. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I grabbed the remote and turned on the TV, flicking through the channels until the security footage from the cameras I had set up filled the screen. I made sure the footage was playing at the right moment. Marissa and Darren's secret meeting from just days earlier. Their smiles, their flirtation, their touch. I turned the volume up just enough for Darren to hear. The scene unfolded on the screen, and I watched his face slowly shift from confusion to realization. He shifted in his seat, but he didn't move to turn it off. He was too caught off guard. "You see, Darren," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "I've been keeping an eye on things. I've seen the messages, the secret meetings, the hotel bookings, the plans." I paused, watching his reaction. "Did you really think you could keep this from me?" Darren's mouth opened, but no words came out. He was trying to piece it together, trying to find a way to talk his way out of this. His eyes flicked back to the TV screen, to Marissa's smiling face, as she looked at him like he was the only person in the room. "Look, man, I didn't mean to," he started, but I cut him off. "No excuses. You've been seeing my wife. You've been sleeping with her behind my back, and now you're here, thinking you can just walk in like nothing's wrong." He stood up abruptly, his face turning red. Look, man, I didn't know she was..." "You didn't know she was married?" I finished for him, standing up as well. "You didn't know she had a husband who trusted her, who gave her everything? Don't try that shit with me, Darren. This isn't about ignorance. This is about you making choices. And now you're gonna pay for them." Darren took a step back, his eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape. He was panicking. I could see it in his eyes, the same look of someone who had realized they had crossed a line they couldn't uncross. "I'm sorry, all right? I didn't mean to hurt you, man. He trailed off, his voice almost pleading. I took a step closer, my voice low and cold. "You're going to leave Marissa's life, now. And if you don't, I'll make sure you regret it. Professionally, personally, whatever it takes." He swallowed hard, clearly weighing his options. But when he looked back at the TV screen, I saw the defeat in his eyes. He knew it was over. "Fine," he muttered, his voice shaking. "I'll leave her alone. Just don't do anything crazy, all right?" I didn't say anything in response. I simply turned and motioned toward the door. "Leave, now. And don't ever come back." He hesitated for a moment longer, but then quickly walked toward the door, his face flushed with embarrassment. As soon as he was gone, I locked the door behind him, my pulse still racing. I cleaned the living room quickly, erasing all traces of the confrontation. The cameras had done their job. They'd captured everything. And I still had the footage as leverage, in case Darren even thought about coming back. But for now, I knew I had what I needed, the truth. And as I stood there, staring at the empty room, I realized something. The truth would set me free, but it would also mark the end of something I'd never imagined I'd lose. I cleaned the last of the glasses from the living room, my mind still reeling from the confrontation with Darren. The silence in the house felt suffocating. No more pretending, no more games. It was over, and it was done. I sat down on the couch, staring at the security footage from the camera. It was still playing on the TV, looping in the background. Marissa's face, Darren's smile, the look on her face when she looked at him. It was like they were the only two people in the world. It was sickening. I couldn't just let him get away with it. I needed him to know there were consequences for his actions. Consequences that went beyond just walking away. I grabbed my phone and shot off a quick message to a contact at work. Someone who could get things done. Someone who had the kind of reach I needed. It wasn't the first time I'd used my connections for a personal matter, but this was different. This wasn't just about fixing something. This was about making Darren pay. An hour later, I received a reply. Consider it done. I knew I had to move fast. Darren had to feel the pressure. He needed to understand that what he'd done wasn't just a betrayal of me, but of the professional and personal life he had built. The next day I was at the clinic, trying my best to keep my mind on work. I had surgeries scheduled, new patient check-ins, all the usual demands. But my focus kept drifting back to the events of last night. I kept thinking about how easily Darren had crumbled in the face of confrontation. But I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt a kind of cold resolve. There was still work to be done. At noon, Ethan stopped by to check in. He had been following the progress of my investigation into Marissa, but I hadn't told him what I had uncovered yet. His expression told me everything I needed to know as soon as he walked into the break room and saw my face. "Everything all right?" he asked carefully, setting his coffee on the table. I met his gaze for the first time in days, my eyes narrowing with the weight of everything I'd discovered. "No, Ethan, everything is not all right," I sighed, trying to decide how much I wanted to tell him. "I confronted Darren last night." Ethan's eyebrows shot up. What? How did that go?" "It went exactly how I wanted it to," I muttered. "He admitted everything. He's not coming back into her life. I made sure of it." I could tell by the look on his face that Ethan wasn't entirely convinced. "Okay, but is that enough? I mean, I get why you're pissed, but what's next?" I didn't answer immediately. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my hand over my jaw. I'm not just going to let him walk away from this. He needs to understand there are consequences. Real consequences. Ethan didn't say anything for a moment, but I could see the gears turning in his head. "You don't mean—" I held up my hand to stop him. "Number, I'm not going to hurt him physically, but I've got connections and I'm going to use them." Ethan frowned, glancing down at the table. "Man, this is getting messy. I don't care anymore. He crossed a line, and so did she. I want them both to feel it." Ethan shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable with my level of anger. "All right, I get it. Just don't go too far, okay? You don't want to end up regretting anything." I was silent for a long moment, my gaze fixed on the table. Ethan was right. Part of me wanted to let it go, to take the high road. But the other part of me, the part that had been deceived and manipulated, didn't want to leave anything to chance. I had spent too much time being the good guy, the one who always cleaned up everyone else's mess. This time, it wasn't going to be that way. "I won't regret it," I said quietly, "but I'll make sure they do." It wasn't long before I started getting the first signs that things were falling into place. By the time I got home that evening, my phone was flooded with messages, emails, and notifications. Darren had been called into his office by HR. His promotion had been frozen indefinitely. The company had started an internal investigation. And then there were the whispers, the rumors about him being caught up in a personal scandal. By the time Marissa got home, I had everything set in motion. The plan was unfolding, and I knew there was no going back now. She walked through the door, her face tired, her phone already in hand. She barely acknowledged me as she dropped her keys on the counter, her focus solely on the screen. The usual distance was there, but now it felt different. It felt colder. "Busy day?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She glanced up briefly, her lips curving into a tight, practiced smile. "Yeah, just work. You know how it is." She dropped her bag on the table and moved toward the kitchen, her voice light, but there was an edge to it. "I'm going to start dinner. I'll be done soon. What's up?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I reached into the drawer and pulled out the folder that contained the information I'd collected over the past few days. The texts, the emails, the hotel receipts, all the proof of her betrayal. I had everything. When she turned around, her eyes met mine, and for the first time in a long time, I saw the hesitation there. The realization that something was about to happen, that I knew. I walked over to her and handed her the folder. Her face drained of color as she took it from me, opening it slowly. As her eyes scanned the pages, I could see the tension building in her. She tried to swallow, but the lump in her throat seemed to get worse with every word she read. "Caleb," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I can explain." But I wasn't interested in explanations anymore. I was done. The truth was already out, and she could deny it all she wanted. But she couldn't escape the consequences. "I don't want to hear it, Marissa," I said, my voice low but firm. "I'm done being the fool. You and Darren can keep your lies, your secrecy. I'm not your backup plan anymore." Her face crumpled, tears welling in her eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sympathy. Not anymore. "You're not the victim here," I said, my voice cold. "You made your choice." The silence in the room was thick, suffocating. Marissa stood frozen in front of me, the folder still in her hands, her fingers trembling. She had tried to read through the evidence, tried to pretend like it hadn't all come crashing down around her. But there was no escaping the truth now. It was right in front of her. She opened her mouth, but the words came out in a breathless whisper. "Caleb, please, please just let me explain." I stood there, my arms crossed, staring at her. I wanted to feel anger. I wanted to shout at her, to make her understand the betrayal. But instead, I felt something colder, emptier. The anger had burned itself out, and now all that was left was the hollow shell of the life I thought I had. "Explain?" I repeated, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. "Explain what, Marissa? The messages? The hotel bookings? The lies?" She stumbled back a step, as if the weight of it all was too much to bear. She opened her mouth again, her eyes wide with desperation. I didn't mean for this to happen, Caleb. It wasn't like you think." "No," I cut her off, my voice firm. "You don't get to make excuses anymore, not after everything you've done." Her eyes darted around, as if searching for something, anything to make this go away. But it was too late. Her excuses didn't matter. The reality was here, and it was undeniable. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said, her voice breaking, tears finally starting to spill down her cheeks. "I thought I could manage it all, keep everything in balance. But She swallowed hard, her voice cracking. "I didn't want to lose you. I thought if I just—" "Stop." I couldn't listen to her anymore. I couldn't let her twist this any further. "You made your choice, Marissa. You chose him. And now, you've lost me." Her shoulders shook with silent sobs, but I didn't feel the need to comfort her. The anger, the pain, it was all still there, but it was replaced with a sharp clarity. There was nothing left to save. I stepped forward, my hands gripping the edge of the table. "This marriage is over. I don't want to fight. I don't want to hear your reasons. I just want you to pack your things and leave." Her eyes widened in shock, the tears flowing freely now. "No." "Caleb, please, please don't do this." But I couldn't hear her anymore. I had spent too long trying to fix things, trying to hold on to something that was already broken. I couldn't keep pretending that we were okay when everything had been shattered. "I'm not asking you to understand," I said, my voice low and resolute. "I'm telling you that it's over. You need to go." For a moment, she just stood there, her eyes wide, as if waiting for me to take it back, to say it was all just a mistake. But I didn't. I couldn't. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had loved, wasn't the same person standing before me. She had already checked out long before I found out the truth. Marissa opened her mouth, probably to say something else, to beg, but I held up a hand to stop her. "I don't want to hear it." I turned away from her, walking toward the door, grabbing my keys off the counter. I needed space, and I needed time to figure out what came next. I wasn't going to stay in this house with her, not anymore, not after everything. "Caleb, please," she whispered, but her voice felt like a shadow in the distance. I didn't look back. Hours later, I sat in my truck, parked in the driveway, staring at the house that used to feel like home. It didn't look the same now. It felt hollow, just like everything else. I should have felt relief. This was what I'd wanted, right? To take control of my life again, to end the nightmare of being stuck in a marriage with someone who had betrayed me. But all I felt was an emptiness, a deep, gnawing ache in my chest. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I hesitated, but I pulled it out anyway. A message from Ethan. "You good?" I stared at the screen for a long moment before typing out my response. "I will be. It's done." The truth had set me free, but freedom felt like a strange and unfamiliar thing. I didn't know what came next, but I knew I couldn't keep living in the past. I put my phone down and turned the key in the ignition, pulling out of the driveway. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay here. I needed to get away, to find some clarity. The road stretched out before me, the night quiet and still. The house, the marriage, the betrayal, they were all behind me now. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was suffocating. I felt like I could breathe again. The following weeks blurred together in a haze of paperwork, lawyers, and endless phone calls. Marissa was gone, her things packed up and taken away by a moving company while I was at work, the house now mine in every sense. But as much as I tried to focus on the clean break, the legal side of things had taken over my mind. The divorce wasn't going to be as simple as I hoped. Marissa had always been good at playing the victim, and I could already feel the tug of war over assets and finances beginning. I had no illusions about this being easy. But I also knew I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into giving up more than I had to. I had been the one who paid for everything in our marriage, everything, and now she wasn't going to get away with taking even more. The lawyer I had hired was efficient, no nonsense. He had a way of making things sound manageable, even when I knew they weren't. But it was the paperwork, the endless forms and back and forth negotiations with Marissa's attorney, that made me feel like I was drowning in a sea of technicalities. Still, I stuck with it. There was no way I was going to let her get away with the mess she'd made of my life. One late afternoon, I sat at my desk, going over the divorce petition again. The sound of my phone buzzing cut through the silence of my office. "I need to talk to you," read the text from Marissa. I didn't even hesitate. I knew what it was. She had to have known I was making moves to secure everything before the official proceedings started. I wasn't about to give her the upper hand, but part of me needed closure, so I texted her back. "I'm not interested in discussing anything outside of the divorce." I could almost hear her frustration through the screen, but the next message came a few minutes later. "Please, Caleb. I'm asking for a chance to explain." I didn't answer right away. I couldn't decide whether I wanted to hear it. The thought of her explanation, the excuses, the lies, felt like poison to me. But I was still struggling with that last piece. The what-ifs. My phone buzzed again, this time a call. "Caleb," she said when I answered, her voice soft, almost pleading. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just need to explain myself. Please, can we meet?" I felt my resolve start to crack, just a little. This wasn't about reconciliation, not really. I knew that. But something in her tone, the vulnerability, made it harder to just hang up. I took a deep breath. "Fine. We can meet, but don't expect anything other than legal talk. That's it, Marissa." She agreed quickly, and we arranged to meet at a small cafe downtown the next afternoon. The next day I arrived early, not wanting to give her the chance to make me second-guess my decision. I didn't want to give her any more of my time than necessary. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. Gone was the woman I'd known, the one who once filled the house with laughter and warmth. Now, she was just a shadow of that. She was dressed in business casual, but her posture was stiff, defensive. Her eyes, bloodshot and tired, told me more than I needed to know. She hesitated before sitting down, her fingers nervously twisting the napkin in her hands. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to make this easier for her. I owe you an apology," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know what I did was wrong. I hurt you. I never meant to." She broke off, unable to finish the sentence. I looked at her, my eyes cold. "You meant to. You just didn't care who you hurt." Her head dropped, and I saw the familiar guilt flash in her eyes. But I wasn't buying it anymore. The pain, the heartbreak, it was all too fresh, too raw. I had no interest in her words. "I didn't want it to end like this," she said, her voice shaky now. "I never wanted to lose you, Caleb." I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it. She had already lost me the second she made that choice. I wasn't a fool, and I wouldn't pretend I hadn't seen the signs all along. But even now, I couldn't bring myself to break her entirely. I had to finish this the right way, on my terms. "I don't care what you wanted," I said flatly, cutting her off. "This is over." "There's nothing left to save, and I'm not here for your excuses." Her face flushed with a mixture of shame and anger, but I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. "What's done is done, Marissa. The damage is already done." There was a long silence between us. I watched her swallow hard, her lips pressed tightly together, as if she was searching for the right words to make it right. But I knew there was no fixing this, no fixing us. Finally, she spoke again, her voice barely a whisper. "I thought we could work it out, but then it just went too far." "Too far?" I echoed, shaking my head. "You crossed a line that I can't come back from. You did it for months, and now you want me to feel bad for you?" Tears started to form in her eyes, but I couldn't be moved by them. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said again, her voice breaking. "I never thought it would get this bad. I never thought I would lose you." I sat back in my chair, letting the silence settle between us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I leaned forward, my voice quiet but firm. "It's over. You've lost me." Her shoulders shook as she finally let the tears fall, but I wasn't going to comfort her, not anymore. I was done being the one who fixed everything, who tried to make everyone else feel better. I stood up, slipping my jacket on. I couldn't stay here any longer, not when every word she said only made the pain worse. Marissa looked up at me, her face streaked with tears, and she whispered, "I'm sorry, Caleb." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I turned and walked out of that cafe, leaving the past behind me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of peace. It was over. Finally. Weeks had passed since I'd seen Marissa. The divorce proceedings had begun, but the emotional weight of it all still lingered like a fog. My life was finally mine again, but it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. I kept telling myself I was fine, but there was a quiet ache in the back of my mind, a gnawing uncertainty about whether I had made the right choice. But I knew I couldn't go back. I had tried to tell myself that maybe we could work through things, that maybe this was just a phase. But then I remembered the way she had looked at Darren, the way she had betrayed me so easily. The truth hit harder than I was ready for. It was late in the evening when I got the call. My phone lit up with her name. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the screen. I had blocked her on everything. How was she still getting through? I picked it up. "Caleb." Her voice was shaky, small, like the woman I had once known. "We need to talk. I know things are bad, but I can't keep living like this. I've made mistakes, but I can't lose you too." I didn't say anything at first. I couldn't. The words wouldn't come, and part of me didn't want to hear it. The same words she'd said in the cafe, the same empty promises. But I didn't hang up. I was curious what she wanted now, after everything. "I'm not coming back, Marissa," I said finally, my voice firm, even though it felt like something heavy was lodged in my chest. "I'm done." "But Caleb," she started, but I cut her off. "Number. You don't get to do this anymore. You've had your chances. Over and over again. You had every opportunity to tell me the truth, to be honest. But you chose lies." "I was scared," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't want to hurt you. I couldn't lose you." I could hear the tears in her voice, but I couldn't bring myself to feel bad for her. "You already lost me," I said, my words harsh, like a final line drawn in the sand. "You lost me the moment you decided I wasn't enough." The silence between us was thick, suffocating, as if neither of us knew how to keep going, how to find some last semblance of closure. But I wasn't looking for closure from her anymore. I had already done the hardest part. I had let go. "You don't have to be this cold," she whispered. "You don't have to hate me." "I don't hate you," I replied, my voice quieter now, though still firm. "But I'm not going to keep pretending. I loved you. I gave everything for you, and you gave me nothing in return." I heard her breathe in deeply like she was holding back a sob, but she said nothing. I could hear her pain, but it didn't change what had happened. I can't do this anymore, I added. I'm not the person I was when we got married. I've changed, Marissa, and this... I paused, the weight of everything crashing in on me again. This was never who I was supposed to be. This wasn't the life I wanted. You don't get to break me and expect me to pick up the pieces again. I'm done. I'll always love you, Caleb, she said, the words coming out in a rush. I know I messed up, but I'll always love you. Please, please don't walk away completely. Her words hit me like a tidal wave, but I knew better than to get caught in the current. She couldn't keep using love as a weapon. She couldn't keep pretending like the damage she'd done could be fixed by empty words. I'm already gone, Marissa, I said, my voice calm, finally feeling the peace I had been searching for. And I'm not coming back. We're done. I hung up without waiting for her reply. The next few days passed in a blur. Marissa didn't reach out again. The divorce papers came through, signed and finalized, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a strange sense of relief, like I could finally breathe. But as I stood in the empty house that had once been a home, something tugged at me. There was still the finality of it all, the feeling that there was no turning back, no more pretending that the life I had was real. It was like standing at the edge of a cliff, looking out at the empty horizon. But then, a small part of me, the part that had been buried under years of giving, of making everyone else feel comfortable, started to rise. It felt like the first real breath in a long time. A few weeks later, I was out at a bar with Ethan, trying to unwind, to leave the weight of everything behind for just a few hours. We were talking about the past, about the things that had happened and where things were headed. You know, Ethan said, taking a sip of his beer, you've handled all this better than I ever could have. I don't know how you're still standing. I looked at him, shaking my head. I don't know, man. I guess I just finally realized that I wasn't the problem. Ethan nodded, his gaze thoughtful. Yeah, you never were. But you sure as hell deserve better than that. For the first time, I smiled. A real smile. Maybe I'll find it. Hell yeah, you will, Ethan said, raising his glass. But for now, let's just drink to you, getting out of this mess. We clinked our glasses together, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the weight of everything that had happened finally start to lift. It wasn't over, not yet. But I was done being the person I used to be. I was done carrying the baggage that Marissa had left behind. The future was wide open, and for the first time in years, I felt ready to step into it. The weeks after the divorce finalized felt like a strange, quiet exhale. Marissa was gone, the house was officially mine, and the weight of the legal battles had finally started to lift. But the emotional aftermath was something else entirely. I spent most of my time cleaning up, literally and figuratively. There were still remnants of her everywhere. The clothes she hadn't packed, the leftover makeup in the bathroom, the scent of her perfume that lingered in the air, stubborn like a memory I couldn't shake. Every corner of the house held a piece of the life we had built together, a life that no longer existed. But as the weeks passed, the empty spaces in the house began to feel less like reminders of loss and more like opportunities for something new. I spent evenings rearranging furniture, getting rid of things that no longer felt like mine, and buying new furniture to fill the gaps. It wasn't just the house that was changing. I was changing too. I took a day off work, a rare thing, but something I'd been meaning to do for myself. I slept in, drank my coffee in the quiet of the morning, and started tackling some of the things I had put off for too long. I cleaned out the garage, cleared out the closets, and finally made time for the things I had neglected. Reading, writing, even taking a walk through the neighborhood. I hadn't realized how much I'd been drowning in the past until I started allowing myself to breathe again. Without Marissa, without the constant weight of trying to make things work, there was space in my life I hadn't known I'd needed. Later that afternoon, Ethan called. He'd been my rock through the whole mess, and even though we didn't hang out as often as we used to, we still made it a point to stay in touch. You doing okay? He asked, his voice upbeat as usual. Yeah, actually, better than I thought I would, I said, sitting back on the couch, feeling the sunlight pouring through the windows. I've been taking some time for myself finally. Feels weird, but good. Ethan chuckled. Weird, huh? That's a good sign. The fact that you can feel the weird means you're moving forward. So what's next? I thought about it for a moment. I had been focused on fixing everything for so long that I hadn't even considered what I really wanted. What I wanted. I don't know, man, I said honestly, but I think I'm ready to figure it out. There's a lot of things I've been putting off in life, stuff that's for me. I'm ready to start living it. That's what I'm talking about, Ethan said, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. And when you're ready to get out there, let me know. I'll drag you out for a drink or two. Hell, I'll even find you a good playlist to get you back in the game. I laughed. I'm not ready to hit the dating scene just yet, man. You never know. You might be ready sooner than you think, he teased. But seriously, take it slow. You've earned that? He was right. I had earned it. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I deserved to enjoy my own life. That evening, I sat outside on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The house was quiet, the way it always was now, but this time, the silence wasn't suffocating. It was peaceful. I could feel the weight lifting from my shoulders, bit by bit. I thought about Marissa. I thought about everything she had put me through. I thought about the lies, the betrayal, the broken trust. But the more I thought about it, the less it mattered. The truth was out, and I had taken control of my life again. It wasn't about forgiveness, not for me. It was about moving on, about becoming the person I wanted to be, free from the past, free from the toxicity. The phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a message from Ethan. Hey, when you're ready, let's hit the town. You need a fresh start. And I'm the guy who can help you make it happen. I smiled at the message, feeling something new and exciting stir inside me. The future was waiting, wide open, full of possibilities. I wasn't sure what it held, but I knew I was ready for it, ready for whatever came next. I stood up, stretched, and glanced around the house, taking in the changes, small but important. For the first time in months, I felt like I had control, and that feeling, it was everything.